Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the 2019 CSIS Global Dialogue, Harnessing Frontier Technologies, Redesigning National, Regional, and Global Architecture. A quick housekeeping announcement before we proceed to the next session. Please note that questions will be collected through Slido, where participants could access through web links that will be displayed during this session. Now, we have reached to the third plenary session of the CSIS Global Dialogue. In this session, we will have an exciting session, which is about security and ethics in the cyber society. The session will be moderated by Dr. Narongchai Akrasani, the chair of Thailand National Committee for Pacific Economic Cooperation. Dr. Akrasani, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, all of you. As introduced, my name is Narongchai, I'm from Thailand. My special qualification is I'm friend of Pak Yusuf and Marie and many others from Indonesia. So by being their friend, I get invited to come here very often, which I like very much. The session, the title is Security and Ethics in the Cyber Society. I'd like to introduce the session very, very briefly. I think we are in the era of digital technology. And for myself as an economist, I look at digital technology in terms of, I may call it digitalization and or cyberization. I use the word and or because I really don't know the difference between the two. But for this session, we use the term cyber. And I think that this subject is extremely important and becoming more and more important, according to my understanding, particularly from 2007, from the time that Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. So the smartphone becomes a touch-on smartphone. And a smartphone for everyone. Everybody has at least one. I have 6 smartphones. Because we all use smartphone, and after Steve Jobs in 2008, Android was introduced. So we have 2 operating systems and the touch-on smartphones. And because of this invention, what happened was data, on and on and on. It happened because whenever we seek data, we create data. And in fact, maybe we create more data than we seek. So by doing so, we leave footprints everywhere. And the document given to us, given to you from organizer is very, very good. Because of this issue about footprint that we leave by using our smartphones and iPhone and so on. The question is, to what extent can internet service providers and platforms use the data without violating people's privacy? The problem then is what will happen if people's digital footprints like mine are being exploited for other purposes, from targeted advertisement and to even political agenda. We all have heard about the Cambridge Analytica. Countries have taken action about this data. In Europe, they have the privacy law, a guideline for data governance, which gives personal data protection related to race, ethnicity, politics, health, gender, and sexuality. And as mentioned here, in the case of Indonesia, the laws which regulate privacy issues up until today have not been set as a national priority, The protection of personal data in Indonesia is supposed to be supervised continuously as innovations are now increasingly making use of big data. So for this session, we want to learn about how to manage the so-called data privacy. We have, for us, our keynote speaker from Japan, Mr. Tetsuro Fukunaga, who is the DG for International Affairs Ministers Secretariat from METI, Japan. And we have 4 other experts. One is a lady from Microsoft, Suni Park. She's corporate, external, and legal affairs of Microsoft. Next person is the Ambassador Igor Disman. He is EU ambassador to us, to our ASEAN. And finally, in order for, if any of you is worried about your data being violated and so on, we have somebody from Interpol, from Interpol. So you can take the case up to him, report the case to him. That's Mr. Doug Wischi. He's a strategic innovation from Interpol. Now, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite the 4 of you to come to the floor, and for Mr. Fukunaga to give the keynote speech. Please come forward. Thank you.
I'm not sure. Okay. Anyway. Yes. I just want to double check if you want to use the PowerPoint or not. Even okay, great. Thank you. Selamat pagi, terima kasih. Thank you for the invitation for such a gorgeous session by CSIS. I'm pretty much excited to come here. I have 2 reasons why I'm excited to come here. First of all, I'm pretty much admire recent development of Indonesian digital industry. In my view, Indonesia is the fastest moving digital transformation nation in the world. They are leapfrogging. You are leapfrogging. And we are pretty much excited to come here to talk with you about this such a relevant agenda. I'm sorry. No. Okay, thank you. Then, another reason I'm excited to come here is this CSIS event is hosted together with PEC. Actually, I was working I was former APEC official. I was working for the APEC 2010 Yokohama, and at that time, we worked together with PEC people for the APEC growth strategy as well as FTAP or things like that. I hope this DFFT, we called it as an abbreviation of Data Free Flow with Trust, will be a next agenda for the PEC to explore by the multi-stakeholder approach. Then, my excitement bring me all the way from, actually I was in the Washington DC last Friday, then I had to speak up on this agenda with our US counterpart. Then I have made a kind of lecture at Tokyo 24 hours ago. And I'm pretty much happy to come here to talk with you on this DFFT together with Asian people, because DFFT is a concept to create by not only public sector, but also private sector, businesses, academics. So I'm pretty much want to involve your participation, your commitment, how to articulate this concept into the actual action. So now let's move to the actual discussion for this one. But I have one thing differ to this morning's special event talking with Sophia. Because her answer was perfect for this session. She clearly mentioned about we got to care much about the data security as well as data privacy. This is what I got to answer for this session. But please be aware that having such a kind of the mindset, what we should do from now is a great agenda and topic. We should talk together with that. Next. After hearing the previous session, I thought we don't need to talk about how the, what the, data flow matters. Actually, everybody talking about data free flow is a kind of lifeblood of the, digital economy, and everybody understands the relevance of that. But to show up my enthusiasm for the Indonesian, I would like to refer to your industries. You already have 4 unicorns. In the case of Japan, we have only 3 unicorns. We are jealous for that. You have already had 4 unicorns. I love these companies' business model because this your unique business model is a great solution for the society or societal challenge here in Indonesia. I should not pick and choose, but I know that Bukalapak is one of the great facilitators for the small and business, 4 million small and 4 million small businesses like Warren, is that a good pronunciation? Mom and pop shop, story seller. They are enjoying a great facilitation by this Bukalapak business model. Fantastic. But I love Gojek. Gojek is my most admirable company in the world. I'm not flattering. Actually, we are seriously thinking of Gojek is doing a very interesting business model to make the inclusive ecosystem in the Indonesia. I mean, I know that most of you here know this Gojek's business model, but those who are coming from Europe, those who are coming from somewhere outside of the ASEAN, I would like to refer briefly because it shows a kind of relevance of the data-driven economy. In my sense, Gojek is a bike platformer. Utilizing a bike, they are starting from e-hailing businesses. Then they are now moving to the delivery or e-payment. Then they are now start thinking of collected data, amassed data, accumulated data through such a kind of e-businesses. Now they are starting or penetrate into the new business model like lending money to the driver who open the new businesses, or make a short loan towards the customers who do really want to pay in an easy manner. Then it makes your relatively poor people can make the better life. I thought, every economist, every policymaker try to make some sort of bottom of pyramid, or make leverage the people, upgrade the society. But this company start creating the ecosystem to support poor people, level up the poor people into the middle class autonomously. This is a fantastic nature, how the data-driven economy can be inclusive. It's persuasive for me. We can believe that data economy has a very sustainable and inclusive power. I feel like I can even stop here, but that's why our Japanese government starts thinking of how the data free flow with trust is relevant agenda for our G20. But let me briefly elaborate this type of points later on. Okay. Until recently, we are living in the information society. Even information society, from search engine, from the online shopping, we already enjoy the new services. And we are collecting a lot of data and analyze and creating new services. But now we are getting to the cyber-physical integration era. In Japan, we call it Society 5.0. In this Society 5.0, real world in the cyber world is getting more and more connected. For example, healthcare services. For healthcare services, or agriculture, these services believed to be a very, very physical service, physical businesses. But now they are getting to utilize data. Then from the cyberspace, they would like to utilize a lot of data, then they can create a new business model. Then it shall be more services, more solutions for those who are suffering from the disease. This kind of phenomena is a kind of a good solution for the human beings. Then we believe that we do need to create this Society 5.0 should be more in a human-centric one. Society 5.0 is a concept advocated by Prime Minister Abe 2 years ago. To make this Society 5.0 materialize, we are seriously thinking about how to address the data governance. Then, because this Society 5.0 seriously make the more explosion of the data traffic than information society. We are not utilizing only cyber data or virtual data. We also got to live into the real data, which shall be collected much more intensively. Then, as I pointed out, more diversified origin and the format of data is needed to be explored. But the issue is, once we get into the Society 5.0, we definitely need to be care much about that. Privacy, or security, or intellectual property, or things like that. For example, healthcare cases. Actually, to evolve the healthcare services with the cyber or digital technology, we do need to track each patient, disease record or something like that. For those who are suffering from a chronic disease, it's quite a sensitive data. This shall be treated in a very, very protected manner. It's also a case for the factory operation or any shop operation. Sometimes these data are believed to be the gold mine for the businesses. But this operational data or machine-to-machine data in the factory or shop has got to be treated in a very, very diligent manner, because sometimes it's a trade secret. Sometimes it's relevant with IPR. In addition to that, in the cyber physical integration world, there's a more dangerous situation for the cyber attack, cyber crime. That's why we do really need to be more serious about security, data security, or data privacy, IPR, protection of consumer. That's the situation now we are living. That's the consideration we got to address in the name of Society 5.0. So, this is a kind of pillars we are thinking about how to solve by this our concept of the data free flow with trust. That's why our Prime Minister Abe posted the idea of the data governance to be discussed among the leaders. First line, how to promote open, free, and secure digital transformation. This is exactly what I said at the previous slide. Under Society 5.0, we do need to address open and free and secure digital transformation. But the reality is it's quite a challenge, because second pillar, every nation try to adapt different approach to these challenges. You may be familiar with the GDPR. Europe is a strong leader for the data protection or privacy protection, but the US has no federal for the data privacy. US insists on the cybersecurity a lot, but Europe is still on the way to develop the cybersecurity framework as a Europe whole. US insists on the pipeline of the digital economy. I mean 5G or AI or infrastructures. Nothing much care about data so far. Europe is care much about data, but they are sometimes different from the infrastructure issues. I spoke too much about that. These kind of things to be reconciled as approach. Now, in addition to that, we are starting seeing that a lot of nations start adopting the more unique approach or protection type approach, so-called data localization. In the name of the privacy, in the name of the cybersecurity, in the name of the public safety, a lot of nations try to adopt more protectionist approach for the data. Think about that. It might be good for the, secure things at this stage, but it might be a very impediment, very good, very bad forces for the innovation or technological development. As again, that data free flow creates a huge or gigantic innovation for decades. Now we can start enjoying the result of the innovation. Why we can stop data sharing, data free flow? This is number one point. Number two, also got to mention about our governance gap against the technological development. Most of government cannot catch up with the policy approach, cannot capture rapid technological innovation or rapid business model innovation. Then no good nation have a good regulation for the sharing services. No good company has no good nation has a great governance model on the data or platformers. Then what we got to do is how we can fill the gap between the incumbent regulation and the new innovation. Having said so, I got to mention that these two agenda is the most relevant agenda for the generation. Think about that. Now we're living in the world of 5G and IoT. In the era of 5G IoT, these technology can bring very relevant forces for the digital economy. We can data share beyond the organization, not beyond the border, beyond the organization. Each company should share with this 5G technology as well as IoT. But without mutual trust, without common understanding about security or privacy, no company can share with the others. That's why we do really need to, in an agile manner, to address this agenda, to utilize 5G and IoT technology at this stage. Then, actually, I thought nobody is care about what's happened, so I tried to skip that. But the point is, at the Davos meeting, Prime Minister Abe advocates this concept of data free flow with trust. Point is, note that this one made not in G20 or G7 event. This was done in the Davos to global leader, to the academics, like Mr. Baldwin, and we do really want to invite all the good willings to materialize this concept. Starting from that, backdrop of the 6 months, we are now reached out the data free flow with trust as a shared concept among the global leaders. Then it was endorsed by the leaders at the Osaka. The significance of this G20 discussion was, for the first time, data and data flow was in the text of the G20. Now we got to address among the global leaders to this data governance issues. This is a first step toward new framework for the data governance. And the most importantly, things for this discussion was trust. We recognize trust as enabler for free flow of data. As I just illustrated, in the age of 5G and IoT, without trust, we cannot make the real data flow or data sharing. Sensitive data never shared with others without trust. Then, we also highlighting the importance of interoperability to create, to fill the gap among the different frameworks. Interoperability is a key word, how we can overcome such a diversified approach among the nations. Then, and at the margin of Osaka, we also had a significant event, Reader's special event on digital economy. We invited such a small room, more than 80, almost 80 member of representative inside the room. Very intimate. And you can even see that this is a rare picture you may see. These two leaders with Prime Minister Abe sitting in a very, very intimate manner. How you can imagine that the discussion was intimate. Then, but I got to say that we have Indonesian leaders, President Jokovic, at the event, but we missed him to this statement. I do want the audience people, the audience people here to make kind of very good input or lobbying or whatever to convince your government to participate in this Osaka track. Osaka track is one of the things we pursue WTO discussion to seek early deliverables as of the 12th WTO Minister Conference in June 2020. We do want to deliver significant development for our WTO negotiation. So we would like to invite Indonesia to this Osaka track, but we also had pointed out again that the FFT could be built not only by governments, cooperation among all the stakeholders. Time is over, but I do like to conclude in 1 minute. Next step for G20 Osaka, we would like to push e-commerce negotiation. On the other hand, we would like to make the trust building through regulatory cooperation with on the cybersecurity, privacy, others, utilizing interoperability or this type of approach to fill the gap among the nations. This is a typical approach what we pursue in the leadership of Japan. But I also mentioned, inspired by the previous session, that we also have to think about how outside of a top-down approach, like G20 leaders committed at the FFT to utilize regulatory cooperation among the member states, but we also got to think about invite governance innovation with private sector. Actually, in Society 5.0, no regulators think that inside the AI or algorithm or whatever. Then they got to regulate? They can regulate? The issue is, I forgot. Maybe think about it, this is smart home. Everybody live in the world of smart home. Nobody cares about the rule in the smart home. People do is just seeing the architecture and the code. Actually, architecture and code matters than law in the age of the Society 5.0. So, here, private sector people is more relevant forces to create a new norms, new architecture, of the age of Society 5.0. That's why we invited all the stakeholders to think about that. Let me stop here. I want to talk about Asia, but I would like to respond in the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Emphasis on data and data governance following this data explosion immediately, especially after 2007 and 2008, as I mentioned before. And with all the data, there's a lot of data mining going on. The thing about data mining is that the more you mine, the more you create data, unlike sand mining and other things. So I don't know what is going to be in the future, how much data we have, and therefore we need this good data governance in order to have good data flow. The next speaker would be Ms. Sunny Park from Microsoft, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm glad I'm coming after the coffee break, and hopefully you will be awake. But it's good to be, and I'm excited, and thank you for the invitation. Powerful technologies such as cloud computing and artificial intelligence are transforming how we live and work, and opening the door to solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. New economies have been created, bringing with them the promise of new jobs and new ways of working. But the digital technology raises new challenges as well. There are concerns about the impact on jobs, whether technology is leaving some people behind, and the vulnerability of cyber attacks. Much of the power and potential of these new technologies depend on analyzing a large data sets to help unlock new insights, identify new solutions to problems, create new services, or just to make everyday tasks a little easier. Microsoft researchers, for example, are using machine learning to try to create more effective, personalized treatments for acute myeloid leukemia, a cancer for which treatment hasn't improved in 30 years. And there are many more examples of how large sets of data and technology are being used to find cures, improve education, empower people with disabilities, among other needs. However, this ability to use technology to leverage large data sets is not without its own challenges. And we recognize that it must be balanced with protecting the privacy of those individuals whose information forms their basis. And we also recognize that privacy and security go hand in hand. As we hear more and more about the benefits of technology, unfortunately, we also hear the unintended consequences of the technology. Since the dawn of time, technology or tools that were invented for its original purpose were also being used for ill-intended purposes. Something as simple as a brick can be used to build buildings or hit somebody over the head. I think we hear news that are coming out currently in Saudi Arabia, where a drone that was intended to deliver blood to the people who need the most were being used as a weapon. According to the book just published by our president, Brad Smith, appropriately titled Tools and Weapons, a technology or a tool that was originally envisioned could easily be used for something else. As tools become more powerful, the consequences of its abuse or misuse become even more perilous. There are three key themes from the book that I wanted to share with you today, since the topic is certainly appropriate for cybersecurity and ethics. First, the tech sector as a whole needs to change. So much is changing right now, and there's much to talk about. And a lot of that revolves around trust, as our keynote speaker earlier has mentioned as well. Trust is the underlying technology that is so much a part of our lives. Trust in the creators of these technologies. Trust that these innovations and innovators will have a positive impact on our world. At Microsoft, we believe that trust starts from the tech companies themselves. As innovative and transformative these technologies may be, people will not use a technology they do not trust. The time has come to recognize a basic but vital tenet. When your technology changes the world, you bear a responsibility to help address the world that you help create. In short, companies that create technology must accept greater responsibility for the future. We are optimistic about the benefits of technology, but also clear-eyed about the challenges. These concerns are real, and we are committed to earning and sustaining trust from our customers, partners, the communities we serve, and the governments that represent them. This commitment is not new, starting more than 15 years ago when we launched our Trustworthy Computing initiatives. But as technology is rapidly evolving and impacting all of us, we know there is more that we need to do to continue earning trust. We understand that we'll be judged by our actions and not words alone. Another initiative we developed is called Trusted Data Principles, and we've been advocating with different stakeholders and governments. As we've often heard, data is the new oil, and it is essential that data can flow across jurisdictional boundaries. We have been grounded in the principle that although we are the custodian of our customers' data, the data ultimately belongs to the customers as the owners, and we do not share and we do not use our customers' data other than to improve the quality of our services. One of the principles we live by, and is backed by our contractual language, is that the law enforcement authorities should go to the owner of the data and not to the custodian. Other than in exceptional circumstances and with proper due process, if the law enforcement authorities have a need for that data, then the owner should provide that data and not the custodians. Second, governments need to enact without impeding innovation. The new problems cannot be solved by tech sector alone. The world needs a mixture of self-regulation and government action to regulate. For example, Microsoft was one of the first companies to call for regulation of facial recognition. Here, too, there are heightened implications for the world's democracies, in part because they are the most dependent on sustaining a broad economic and social consequences at a time when technology is such a disruptive force. More than ever, it seems difficult for many democratic governments to summon the will to act. But this is a time when democratic governments must move forward with new policies and programs, separately and with each other, and in a new form of collaboration with the tech sector itself. Put simply, governments need to move faster and start to catch up with the pace of technology, and the private sector can certainly be a partner to future-proof the policies. Let's take AI as an example. AI creates huge opportunity for business and society. However, it also raises important questions. Is the world creating technology it can control? As computers make decisions that have previously been made by humans, how do we ensure they are made in an ethical way? The public is increasingly focusing on this challenge. And at tech companies, a new generation of employee activism is pressing for action. As they point out, if we wait too long, it will be difficult to put the AI genie back in the bottle. Microsoft thinks AI should be used responsibly and accessible to all. We have published the book, Future Computed, setting out suggested AI principles like fairness, reliability, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability to underpin AI. We need to ask not only what technology can do, but what technology should do. And perhaps more importantly, what technology should not do. These are questions we need to work together with the government to ensure that the governments develop the right governance structure for the use of AI. Finally, we need new solutions to new problems. Digital technology's new challenges require more active collaboration across traditional institutional boundaries. More than ever, the protection of fundamental human rights rests on steps that governments, NGOs, and companies must take together. This will continue to become more pronounced as even more data moves to the cloud and more governments push for data centers to be constructed within their borders. These issues are bigger than any single person, company, industry, or even technology itself. They involve fundamental values of democratic freedoms and human rights. The technology innovation is not going to slow down. The work to manage it needs to speed up. The issues of the 21st century requires initiatives that are both multilateral and multi-stakeholders in scope. We understand the value of partnership, of backing words with actions, of being transparent, sharing the things we have learned, and to learning from others. We will be a strong partner to governments, businesses, and communities as we work together to answer critical questions. An example of a norms-building process that took place outside the United Nations and brought together both governments, industry, and civil society is the Paris Call for Trust and Security in Cyberspace. It was announced in November of last year by the French President Emmanuel Macron. What truly distinguishes the Paris Call is that it widens the base of support for its commitments. For the first time, it includes civil society, the industry groups as supporters who have agreed to uphold and further collaborate on the agreement's 9 principles. It serves as an example of a new kind of diplomacy, multi-stakeholder diplomacy, where governments, the private sector, and civil society come together to protect our online world. The signatories to the Paris Call affirm their willingness to work together in the existing fora and through the relevant organizations, institutions, mechanisms, and processes to assist one another and implement cooperative measures. The Paris Call now has been endorsed by 66 governments, 347 industry members, 139 civil society organizations, more than 550 entities in total. This represents the largest ever multi-stakeholder group assembled to support a cybersecurity-focused document. Endorsers include all 28 EU member states, 4 out of 5 of the 5 Eyes countries, more than 100 civil society entities, as well as dozens of globally recognized companies, as well as all the companies making up 2 prominent industry-led cybersecurity initiatives, the Cybersecurity Tech Accord and the Charter of Trust. To maintain global trust in technology and to secure cyberspace against new and emerging threats, public policy must continue to evolve to ensure cyberspace is used ethically. But it takes a village. It is a shared responsibility, and public and private sectors and civil societies all need to lean in. We understand our responsibilities, and we're committed to gaining your trust. And we look to all of you who are here to join us on our journey to make cyberspace a safe place for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. So it's all about the data flow with trust. Can we actually allow this data flow with this trust? Of course, Sunny is saying that the tech companies are doing their best, apart from selling our data or using our data for selling things to us. But that is not enough of the companies doing, or governments must play an important role. And I think we have seen that this subject has had a high priority among governments. You saw pictures earlier, 3 leaders, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, sitting next to Prime Minister Abe. But the 2 presidents are not looking at each other. You know, they somehow perhaps did not like each other very much. Now, with the governments having to do certain things, we have learned that the European Union has come up with this GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, that's already been implemented. So now I'd like to invite Ambassador Igor Drismans to share his views about this so-called data privacy, data protection in the European Union, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you very much. It's actually my first week on my new job, so I'm very happy to have this first public speaking opportunity. Good afternoon to all of you. And I agree, as the title of the session suggests, that data protection has an ethical dimension. Without privacy, there is no space where the individual is free to think, develop his own ideas, or experiment and pursue his life as he deems fit. Massive data breaches and the mishandling of personal data in the Facebook Cambridge Analytica case has sent shockwaves through our democratic systems. You've mentioned it in your introduction, moderator. And they have reminded us of what is at stake. That is preserving our most intimate sphere to protect the functioning of our democracies and ensure the sustainability of our increasingly data-driven economy. That's where the main theme of this panel, Ethics in Cyber Society, comes in. Ethics brings together the different dimension of privacy by making sure that any activity involving processing of data remains fair to the individual. Now, beyond the legal aspects, we concentrate on something more tangible for the people, the ethical treatment of data. And this has been the subject of a very lively debate in Europe for the last decade or more. And the answer that we've come up with is the so-called GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, an EU law which is directly applicable in EU member states and was adopted in 2016 and is in force since 2018. I suppose most of you are familiar with it, but if not, I do recommend you go and see some of the Q&As that they have on the website on the exact functioning of the GDPR. But let me just summarize the main characteristics. 1, the GDPR is comprehensive. It applies across industries and sectors. 2, it comprises a core set of enforceable rights. And 3, it provides for enforcement by an independent supervisory authority. After 1 year of implementation, we conclude that the GDPR is delivering. We're starting to see positive trends when it comes to innovation and data security, or when it comes to citizens making use of their own rights. For companies, compliance with GDPR is proven to be first and foremost an opportunity to put their data house in order. Actually, to a large extent, our experience with the application of the GDPR is showing what data protection is really about. It is having a culture of the responsible use of data. putting in place operational rules for those at all levels dealing with data and ensuring appropriate data security. Companies are, in our view, reaping the benefits from their data protection investments, such as greater innovation, competitive advantages, and reducing costs related to breaches. What we also see is that data protection is increasingly a selling point for companies, a strategic driver for businesses. More and more users value the privacy and security of their data. For instance, we're observing on the marketplace the offer of innovative products and services with novel privacy or security solutions. Think about search engines. So many companies say now that privacy is increasingly becoming a competitive differentiator in their markets. Citizens also took advantage of GDPR. They've exercised their data protection rights with controllers, and they have also used their right to submit complaints to data protection authorities. Now, I spoke about the European experience, but this is really a global trend. Today, more than 120 countries have privacy laws in place. For example, Brazil, Argentina, Kenya, Tunisia, Morocco, and Chile recently took initiatives to strengthen their data protection regime. In Asia, not only Indonesia, but countries like India, Thailand, or Singapore are following the path opened by Japan, if I may say, and Korea some time ago, and are also legislating on data protection. This developing convergence in privacy standards at international levels offers new opportunities to facilitate data flows and thus trade. Given also that companies increasingly operate across borders and prefer to apply a single set of rules in all their businesses worldwide, being part of this global trend can help the domestic economy, can contribute to an environment conducive to direct investment, and improve trust between commercial partners. So if there's one positive thing that has come out of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, it is the global awareness about the importance of personal data. Protection that has generated among ordinary citizens around the world who want to see their privacy protected and their data to be safe. Their questions are increasingly answered in a convergent way. As we're in Jakarta, you spoke, moderator, about Indonesia. We understand that Indonesia is also drafting its data protection law, and I want, on behalf of the EU, to congratulate the government for this important initiative. The draft that we had a chance to see was promising and has a lot in common with the GDPR. I can therefore say that Indonesia can count on the European Union to share our experience with our Indonesian friends. If Indonesia's standards of data protection are converging with those of the European Union, we will be in a position to recognize the adequacy of Indonesian rules. This would amplify the trade and economic impact of a future free trade agreement between us. If I can give, again, the example of Japan, we have concluded a adequacy agreement with Japan, creating the world's largest area of safe data flows. Now, maybe in conclusion, let me stress that GDPR is not just about obligations. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for business and individuals to build trust. It's an opportunity to revolutionize the culture surrounding data practices, not only by legal compliance, but also by changing and embracing privacy ethics. We see GDPR also as a tool for the future, as the fundament on which we can build our European responses to artificial intelligence, to machine learning, to social media, or to election integrity. So the message I want to bring home is that far from being an impediment to business, data protection helps to ensure the trust of customers, which is becoming a competitive advantage, and to ensure data management spurs innovation, for example, to privacy by design. So thank you very much.
So with all this data, the privacy of data and so on, what we need is to have a practical data privacy law, which is, I can tell you, is the most difficult. Thailand, we have just passed that law and we are waiting for implementation. And people are so afraid how we are going to implement it, especially for companies which have a lot of past data, like life insurance company, millions of customers with private information, and those things will have not been digitized. How would you digitize them? For new data, maybe it's easier, but this is really, really a tough but important, and it's a part of life these days that we have to deal with. And European Union, as ambassador just told us, is one of the example. Nonetheless, with all this protection and this and that, there will still be the data crime, cyber crime. And that could happen across the country, outside the country, and so on. That's why we need Interpol. So now Doug Wischiel will come and tell us, don't worry, he will take care of us. Please, Doug.
Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to come and speak at this conference. It's a privilege. Doug Witchie is my name. I'm one of the assistant directors in the Innovation Centre at Interpol. We're based in Singapore. Just quickly, if you think Interpol's anything that's portrayed by Hollywood, it's not. All right. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, apparently he's imitating my character, is appearing in Red Notice next year. It's got nothing to do with what Interpol does. But that aside, Interpol's primarily a coordination organisation focused on criminal investigations around three pillars: counter-terrorism, organised and emerging crime, excuse me, and cyber. Based on those three pillars, we have 194 member countries, which obviously allows us to coordinate large amounts of data, primarily focused on harm mitigation, minimisation, and disruption of criminal activity, whether that's through a prosecution, post an event, or trying to disrupt an activity prior to it causing harm. So just to put a perspective on it, an international organisation which has absolutely no jurisdiction. So very much dependent on our national police agencies and the police forces of the 194 countries to actually do a lot of the work that needs to get done. From an innovation perspective, we have a framework for, I guess, change and technology, and technology and digitalisation is an overlay across each of these key changes. Now, I'm not going to talk about each of these issues, but I'd like to flag a couple of them. Interpol's mission is to provide a safe and secure global environment. And some of the changes that have been caused by this assumption that technology is going to make the world a better place, and we've heard from a number of speakers, present some security challenges for us moving forward and some safety and security issues for us. We talked about the workforce and the automation of capabilities, 5G, autonomous vehicles, robotics, and the like, artificial intelligence, and how it's going to dislocate quite a portion of our communities. People not being able to find other work is a critical issue from a security perspective. We live in cities, we'll stay in cities whilst they're safe. If you have a workforce that gets dislodged by technology and they don't have an ability to reskill or a passion to actually undertake that activity, they're going to turn to other activities to survive. And the risk is they get harvested by organised criminal groups as a potential workforce, or they actually start to commit crime themselves, or they start to obviously get quite anxious about their circumstances and start to do things that actually create harm to other people. Then the city becomes unsafe and people move away from that city. So some interesting challenges. These don't sit with law enforcement. This sits with the community, this sits with the government, and this sits with industry. I hear time and time again when I go to presentations and conferences about how fantastic technology is going to change the world. And recently I was at a senior executive from one of the big global companies talked about how 5G and artificial intelligence and facial recognition will mean that he'll be able to walk to his office, the system will recognise him and give him access. And we talk about privacy and ethics. Say if I don't want to be identified by a company as I approach the door. Do you have an opt-out? Where is the standard of facial recognition, how it's used? We talked about the biases of technology and the algorithms around those issues. That's one aspect. But should I be facially recognised and profiled as I go into a supermarket to buy my groceries? And advertising's then directed to me to try to encourage me or influence my purchase. And I mean, these are questions that we need to think about and are challenged about. So currently, I guess a picture of cybercrime, it's not positive. All the trends are going up. They say around about 18 victims a second, victims of cybercrime. 1 in 10 people on social media have been a victim to cybercrime. It's been estimated that there's about a $1.5 trillion business, and that possibly is an underestimation because the majority of cybercrime is not necessarily reported. So these are big challenges for us to actually think about how we can actually put process and practice in place to mitigate the harm that cybercrime presents to the community, because it undermines the foundation of trade and economic environments using the World Wide Web. The issue's not going to get better. And this is a Shogun map of currently connected devices to the internet, and there's a lot of black there. What happens when that starts to light up? The rollout of IoT devices, because everyone wants a new device. They want the electronic interfaced kettle so they can boil the water for their cup of tea in the morning 1 minute quicker than actually pressing the button on the kettle. They want technologies and capabilities. I've got a young son, he's a technologist, and he seems to be quite a good one. So he went and bought a smart globe and put it up in his bedroom, and of course it can change colours and it turns on as an alarm, and it does all this really weird stuff with his phone. But he hooked it into the home network. So it's with the Google Home and everything else that's wired in there. So I'm up the other end of the house talking to Google, and I'm manipulating his light in his bedroom. And so he thinks he has a bug. So he's working on his phone trying to fix his light. Quite innocent, a bit of fun. My son gets frustrated. But what happens if it's a criminal that's hacking the IoT device because the cybersecurity capabilities of that device are lax? They access the network through that device. They then get control and access to your routers and other systems that are connected to your home. And extrapolate that further to a smart city. The challenges are immense and they're going to grow. So we talked about IoT quickly, big data and data exploitation, lots of discussion. Cambridge Analytica is a great case in relation to the manipulation of votes and targeting advertising. Darknet and anonymous networks is a big issue for us. The marketplaces in the darknet present some challenges to communities and societies. There are services that provide computer criminal activities. There was a recent case in Europe where a number of servers were attacked. They thought it was a state actor. They looked into it. They found out it was a group that was actually advertised on the internet. People could pay around about €100 for a denial of service attack on an IP address. So law enforcement executed warrants on the company that was providing that service, and they had about 36,000 clients. So 36 people had provided money to this company for denial of service attacks against other IP addresses and capabilities. So some big challenges when it gets into the anonymous networks and how these communities actually operate, how organised crime starts to propagate within these environments, and can network really quickly. There's a low entry into cyber, potentially through the service industry on the criminal side, and there's quite a big return because data's value, the code's value. You write a good set of code, you can apply it 1 million times, and you can get quite a large return in relation to those types of things. I think it's important too that we put out messages around the cyber threat and risks. Now, currently in Africa, they're going through such a significant revolution of technology. They've gone from pretty much level 1 to 4 overnight. The biggest uptake of internet banking, but the biggest risk they're currently experiencing across Africa is malware for mobile devices. All the interfaces are in English. People don't necessarily understand what it means. They get an email, malware, they hit the link, the malware gets dumped down to the phone, and it's becoming a significant risk. So how do you get that awareness campaign and message out to potential victims about what to do and what not to do? These are challenges. We need global partnerships. Law enforcement cannot do this on its own. It needs partnerships with industry, it needs partnerships with academia, and it needs very, very strong partnerships with the community. We talked, the young lady from Microsoft mentioned the issues around access to private data held by companies. That's very valid. We need a warrant when it comes to that type of information or some sort of legal authority to get that's independent to what we issue. But what stops a company to report people that are trying to hack or penetrate the firewall? People outside of that company that are trying to do its damage. And law enforcement can play a part in mitigating some of those risks for organisations and community if you report it. And these are some of the challenges that we need to work through and re-engineer the discussion about how we can together make a difference in relation to this effort. And really, cyber's a global issue. You know, countries say to me, oh, we've got a very, very good cyber security strategy. And I said, oh, that's great. Are you connected to any country that hasn't? Oh, of course. Well, then you've got a vulnerability. So from a global perspective, we need to improve the security for all countries to protect our own interests as well as those of other countries. And that's the challenge. Because our laws aren't consistent. Cybercrime in one country isn't a crime in the neighbouring country because of inconsistency in laws. There's new cyber crimes that are being invented every day. You know, cyberbullying, you know, the harassment of kids, the extortion of people in relation to a whole range of activities. Some of these haven't even been conceptualised in the legislative frameworks of many countries. So we need consistent laws and we need those processes in place to move forward. So just on the, I guess, the sales pitch, Interpol's got an innovation centre and a cyber directorate in Singapore. They're global capabilities. Our cyber centre, is a fusion centre here behind us, really needs to focus on how we move forward. One aspect's the law. We need more investment in cyber capabilities within each country to be able to respond and actually prevent some of these attacks. We need to be able to locate offenders. Cyber means that an offender could be in one country, a victim could be in multiple other countries, the servers they're operating through could be in another country, how they're laundering the money could be in another country. The challenge for us is how do we exchange information and evidence across all these different countries quickly so we can actually take a response and actually stop this from occurring. Because currently our ability to transfer evidence across countries is quite difficult, quite challenging, and the criminals have moved on by the time we can actually get the information to actually act. So we need to look at how we can do that better. And we need to improve our communication and an awareness of the issues around a raft of cyber criminal activity and how we can actually make a difference. So that's it for me, and I'll look forward to some questions.
Oh, thank you very much. This is real life. I did not know that crime profit is that high, you know. It's very attractive. But you see, I've been pondering this, and I think this It's going to be with us, and we have to deal with it. I don't know how, because as we have listened, as we have learned, this data explosion, it's going to go on. I call this new capitalism, new capitalism, because now the most important asset is data, and tech companies, the new startup and this company, what they are doing is creating more and more unit under management. For some of you who are not in the finance, you might not have heard of this asset under management. That's what we have been doing over many years, asset under management. Now we have unit under management. So company like Gojek, the more users, the more units they have, the more money they can raise. And therefore, it's market-driven. Data is now market-driven. And with that, allow opportunity for society to do good things with data. At the same time, allow opportunity for bad people to make use of data. And this is the data crime that Doug's been talking about. And we need organizations like Interpol, which is trying their best to help with managing this. Okay, now we have time for question, for discussion. I understand, Mr. Fukunaga, you had a little bit more to say at the end, and you stopped. What's that? Was it you wanted to say something before the time ran out earlier? You want to finish? You want to do that first? No? It's all right.
Because there's a couple of questions we have.
Okay, so if that is the case, then we have a list of questions. You can send them up. Well, I have one directed to Mr. Fukunaga. And the question is, in my opinion, trust is somehow subjective. What are the key variables of trust? Could you elaborate more on this? It's a very philosophical question. Please, would you like to answer, please? The microphone here, if it works. I don't know whether it works.
Dandy, thank you for your question. You made a good point that because this is one of the discussion points, even at the G20 level discussion, what the meaning of trust. This is obviously among the G20 nations, trust regarded in a quite a different manner. Maybe you can understand. I heard that in literally in the Chinese meaning of trust is a quite different meaning from the other world. For example, then Europeans do really want to make trust is most of the one of the variable things in their data governance. Having said so, actually that the meaning of trust is most important things to share by the like-minded countries, like-minded approach to make it some sort of common target to be explored. But our G20 process put more emphasis to figure out what the trust means. We don't put emphasis on that. We rather put emphasis on what we should do as actual action to secure the sort of the some sort of the common understanding of the meaning of trust and what we should do next. I mean, we do put the emphasis on the action rather than discussion. Then we agreed with how we can explore our WTO e-commerce negotiation, not only talking about data free flow as well as the data flow facilitation of the digital trade, but also we agreed to talk. We somehow agreed to talk about how we can secure that, we can earn the trust in the digital trade. Maybe I do know that I'm not answering the question, but this is the actual result what we did.
Any other panelists would like to respond? Yes, Sunny,
Yes,
please.
if I may add, I guess 2 points. It is true, it is very difficult to pinpoint what trust is, but I think we could start with probably a common taxonomy, right? So being a lawyer, right? One of the things that we had to learn, at least I had to learn when I went to law school, is what does it mean by the word reasonable? Reasonable person does this or that. But that is a standard, as a legal standard, right? My reasonableness could be very different from probably people here. But I think through discussions and precedents, you can say something is reasonable. And there's a sort of a common understanding. So I think we can start with the taxonomy to say what trust should mean. I think a second thing that we can probably do is for companies like Microsoft, trust means if I say I'm going to do something and I do it, then that's trust, right? If I say your data is yours and I'm not going to use your data, I would think that is trust, right? If I don't tell you what I'm going to do and I sneak and do something, I would think you would say that wasn't very trustworthy. So I think one thing we can do is we need to make sure we're very, very transparent and specific about what it is that we're going to do with your data and how we're going to use it. And then we'll live by those obligations. So that's one way. Second is, like I said, I think we need to have a common set of taxonomies, and then we have precedent to say what trust would mean. So those are my two sort of, I guess, additional comments.
Yeah, but there's some value in this, the word trust in certain society, and it may be different. And that's related to the second question. Indonesia has internet censorship. Should governments dictate data free flow for certain topics? Why not for others? Anyone would like to respond to that?
I guess I'll start.
Yes, please, Doug, please.
Look, we ran an event in July called Interpol World in Singapore. And we had a cyber psychologist, and she actually explained that, I guess, some of the exposures that the internet provides in relation to the free flow of information has desensitised some people in relation to habits, process and practices. And I guess she correlated to that to some countries that have limitations in relation to the access of certain materials, and they don't see the effects or the negative effects that the internet's provided to some countries. So I think there might be some limitations, but how you set the bar and where it needs to set, I think that's the challenge. I think that's the real challenge.
Anyone else would like to respond? Yes, please.
Yeah. Actually, I'm also referred to the previous question, but it's also relevant with this question. Thanks to the Sunny. Actually, that I thought how to seek the trustworthiness is a kind of pretty much practical operation. How we can discuss, how we can do something. Maybe it might be a trial and error process, but the trust is very important. We got to move. Then for this, government intervention for the data free flow discussion is also kind of current phenomena in my sense. Most of the government starts thinking about that. So much fear of the cybersecurity or public safety. Some government try to make the intervention against the data flow, but some governments should understood it might be a disruptive to the technological innovation or exploring a new business model or things like that. Then it comes a time for any government to revisit their operation. I knew that some good example in Brazil. Brazil government formally installed a very protective, protective data protection regime inside the country. But Brazilian private sector, Brazilian opinion leaders asked the government to revisit this incumbent law to think about new framework to be more business friendly or technological neutral. These kind of things could be happen.
Yes, the ambassador, yes, like to share with us, please. And we will allow questions from the floor too, please get ready for your questions. Ambassador, please.
Sure, very, very briefly on the question of censorship, I'd like to draw the parallel with the real world, right? The basic principle is the one of freedom of speech, but we all know that freedom of speech is not absolute. There's things you can't do, there's things you can't say. You can't make an appeal for hatred or racism or any of that sense. So I don't see why the internet should be different from the real world. I think that's just the basic principle one should apply.
And that varies from country to country. Even in ASEAN, you know, we have different things about things that we are not allowed to talk about. I don't want to go into that. I may get into trouble. But definitely different among us ASEAN. Yes, you like to participant from the floor, you like to ask questions? Yes, please. There's one hand up there. Microphone, please, to the gentleman on my left-hand side. No microphone? Very good. The gentleman is walking up to the front. We have Interpol man. You see how fast Interpol is. See?
I'm using an Interpol speaker. Now this is what happened with trust. Now we have the sign of trust. If I send you my email, I will put sign of trust of mine. And this means that everything in that email is valid and it's true, trusted. And you, when you receive something with a sign of trust, you can only use the information according to the agreement that we have through that trust. That means I trust you and I give you my information. Now, we have talked about ethics, supposed to be. Nobody talks about ethics. But when you have this trust, you put the sign of trust. Then comes the ethics. Do not use that information for other than what you are allowed to do. And that is what you call the trust in IT. Now, IT is very engineering and technical. I started in 1973 to do this, right? What happened? It is politicized. There are a lot of government, politics, and they work usually only for 5 years, and then they change people, while we are doing it in the community. So like just now was asked about the Osaka track, right? Here in Indonesia, we have the cybersecurity community, and we are doing those trust and ethics to control ourselves with our data. Now, I'm serving hotels in Indonesia and overseas. Those data is with me, right? But I cannot tell you how much is the room rate of this hotel to the other. We will never do that. Why? Because of that trust. They trust my system, and I keep that trust. Are you with me? So, my suggestion for the Osaka track, I will bring my cybersecurity community there. We will talk about it, and let's agree on a certain rules. If I give you my trust, if my signature is already what you call the valid electronic signature, then let's do the ethics and don't misuse of my data. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Thank you. And when you get hacked, you call up Interpol. Yes, right. No, but it may not be the parties involved, you see. It could be someone else doing the hacking into your system, like me, going in, you know. It's all right, sir. It's okay. Yes. When you use blockchain, it's more difficult. I understand, yes. Yes, Marie, please. It's almost 5 o'clock. Can I continue, Marie, with your...
Yes, please, since I'm asking question.
Okay. Well, she has the real authority. She's the real boss. Please, Marie.
I had a question on data localization. because I know that the discussion is that we should have free data, free flow of data. And obviously, a large number of countries still have data localization. So the question is, I think the debate is going towards that we have free flow except for legitimate public policy concerns. If I'm not mistaken, that's the language that we use. And Indonesia, it's a very important question for Indonesia because we are, at the moment, probably going to come up with some regulation along those lines, that you would have different levels of security. And the highest strategic security is the one that you need to keep in country. The rest probably can be free flow or, with some regulations. So my question is, what do you all think about this issue, and where do you think it should go? And what are some of the policy issues that we need to go ahead? And I was kind of thinking through that, in the WTO, when you talk about free flow of goods, it's free flow of goods, they have the principles of non-discrimination, transparency, national treatment, but you can restrict flow of goods based on public moral and consumer safety and so on and so forth. So probably we are going in that direction, but I would be, really like to know what all of you think about that. Thank you.
Maybe Fukunaka first, please. No? No, I'll respond to Marie. Yes.
Okay. Actually, I do want to take care about
You can do that too. Please do.
Because, but maybe natural way is, please ask the Interpol answer.
No.
Can I I'll start and then I'll have everybody else sort of add. First of all, I think there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding around the word localization and why we need it. I know people talk about even data classification, and it means different things if you ask people. So I think there's sort of a confusion in the taxonomy. I think first I would say you need to ask why you want localization, right? You talked about, very sort of, very strategic, national security level information. One of the reasons why you would have data classification is not so much where it's located, but who has access to that information, right? Just because, money's in my pocket doesn't mean it's safer than if it's in the bank. I think all of us stop putting money under the mattress and with money in the bank because we feel that there's trust there and they are more equipped and they are the experts in handling my asset as opposed to putting it underneath my bed. So I think the data is sort of a similar thing. It doesn't really matter where it is. Just because the data is sitting in my computer doesn't mean it's safer. Just because the data is sitting in a server in a back room doesn't mean it's safer. But I would think it has to do with who has access to that information. If it's, I guess I could use an analogy like in a house, right? When you come into your house, you probably have a lock. You may even have 2 locks because you want to guard against people coming into your house. But I'm not going to put all that locks on my refrigerator because I don't really think people need to have all those locks in order to get eggs. So I think that's a similar thing. I think one way that you should look at it is, why do we have data classification? And there's some data that you need to make sure that you have a heightened security so not everybody could get access to. And there's some data that's just the public. It really doesn't matter. And the more security you put into it, it means it's going to be harder for people to use that data. And a lot of the data, especially the ones that the government has, is probably useful to the citizens to make better services, to provide better products, and so forth. So does it really matter that these data, as well as those really important data, are sitting within Indonesia or is sitting somewhere else? Probably not. But I think those are the questions that the government should ask, and they should work together with companies. Lastly, just say, Gojek, for instance. Gojek is great here, but I know I use Gojek in Singapore. If the government says you need to have all your data just in the country, then the unicorns of now, and the future unicorns will probably have a harder time operating their business because of these regulations.
Yes, anyone else would like to respond? Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
Please, may I go first?
Yes, please.
Okay. Actually, I would like to combine the two questions. First, starting from the trust question. That the things I left in my presentation was Japan is ready to trust building together with Indonesian businesses. Then, for that purpose, we do really need to make the cooperation not only government to government, but also private to private. Then, we would like to want to do business Indonesian decacorn unicorns like Gojek, Tokopedia, or Bukalapak. For these people, Japan is ready to provide our deep tech technology like AI, IoT, or delivery services, or things like that. Then, based on that kind of business relationships, we do understand how we are relevant to work together cross-border manner. I mean, actually, maybe, Sunny illustrated how the Gojek do need a business overseas, not only in Indonesia, in Singapore. Once your business start doing business in abroad, they are now start understanding how we are living in this more global harmonization and global coherence of the standard or regulation is relevant. Then Japanese idea, even for the cybersecurity, we do really need to make a cooperation with such a nations in Indonesia, capacity building wise, or any sort of the technical assistance to set up the more interoperable, more technological neutral, more flexible rule to make your business more competitive. Again, back to the Marie's question though, we do also do that in the terms of the in terms of data localization. As Sunny mentioned that we do in that manner to make the global cooperation, but also I rather say that we do put emphasis on the technological innovation or technological development for the data storage. Actually, that data storage technology is also developing. That's why what Sunny said that the issue is where to store the data. Issue is how to store the data, how to manage the data. That kind of development is ongoing. Then we can start thinking about how to certificate such a management in a technological cooperation. These kind of things we do really want together with Asian countries, in particular Indonesian. Thank you.
Definitely top priority, and that issue, data management internationally. Any more from the floor, please? Participation? Yes, there's one hand up from Thailand, the lady from Thailand, Kunotip, please.
Thank you. Actually, I have two questions.
You like to stand up, please?
Yes, hi. He's my boss.
No.
Yes. I have two questions, but I don't know if I'm allowed for two questions. Well,
Yes.
The first one is trust. And everyone is saying that that's the currency for the new economy. And a lot of platforms talk about, these interesting tick boxes where you give consent. And that is basically defined as informed consent, which is really an oxymoron. It's not. I come from this field before, so I can tell you that that's one. Two, it's going to be hard to imagine governance when the business models of these tech platforms is to disrupt and to use data. What would stop them? And this is more between platforms and platforms. They will either do mergers, acquisitions, predatory ways to acquire data in order to disrupt and create new services, basically to destroy their competitors. So I would really caution the people who are actually looking at data governance, whether that's actually realistic, because the business model and the governance model is quite broken. Second, I was in a meeting a few months ago, maybe last year in OECD, and I met someone who talked about trust and truth. And in the new economy, they're not the same thing. And facts, as we understand as truth, is not based on facts, but rather based on whoever is seen as the most trusted or in their eyes, which could actually be fake, which could actually be, puffed up realities, and that is considered the truth, the facts. So these are all interesting comments, which I don't disagree with any of the speakers here, but I do think that we have a parallel reality here, and that world doesn't sync with what you are talking about. So I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I'd like to see the reaction, especially from Interpol. Thank you.
Well, I think maybe, but maybe Microsoft first, because the first question is obviously the model,
I was definitely hoping for Microsoft.
Would you like to, please, Sunny, would you like to comment on that, please?
I think there's a lot of gray area for anyone. I mean, I've listened to all the speakers, speak, and if there was a silver bullet to something, then we would have solved the problem by now. In terms of ticking the box, these are the challenges that we see. Sometimes governments have a very prescriptive regulations, and they feel that more is sometimes better, right? So for instance, in one of the countries around Asia, if there is a breach, although nothing has happened, there is a breach, you need to notify people within certain hours, within 24 hours or within 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it may be. And in principle, it sounds great, but let's say, it takes a while for tech companies to learn what exactly happened and whether or not any damage has been done. And I guess we can say, well, it doesn't matter, I have the right to know. But sometimes if you give too many information and you're overwhelmed with this information, it becomes a spam. So I personally, and it could be because I'm biased, but I would personally want to know certain information that are critical that I make decisions on. But if you keep sending too many information to say, oh, this happened, but nothing happened. Oh, there was something, but nothing happened. And then after a while, I think you become numb. So I think there is a balance. You do need to notify people of certain incidents that have happened, but what is the right combination to notify the customer? And there isn't like I said again, a silver bullet to that, but I think there's something that needs to be balanced, and they need to, the governments as well as the industry and other people have to really balance that interest to see what is an informed decision and how do you make sure that people are given that kind of information. The thing about truth and trust, gosh, that's a philosophical question that I think, as I said, this is a multi-stakeholder kind of question that we need to have. There's legislations now on fake news. Who would have thought that we would have, when the Facebook first came out and you could post things, who would have thought we would be here today talking about these things? And it's the human ingenuity is something that we just can't predict. But I think we need to have an open dialogue so that we can address these concerns that we have, and concerns that we don't even know about today, but that'll come. But I think the first and foremost is that we really do need to have the government, the industries, the consumers, the civil societies coming together so that we can solve. Hopefully at the end of the day, I think everybody really wants to do the right thing, other than the really bad people that Interpol's gonna catch.
And I think
please, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, just in a consumer society too, if you don't think you're getting the trusted service that you demand, you can walk. I mean, in the tech company, there's so many different other applications and services and businesses now and more every day. So there's opportunities to look elsewhere.
Now, this question about fact and truth and trust, fact and fake, does Interpol have the capability to prove any of these things?
Well, our job is to try to find the truth. From an investigative perspective, it's a search for the truth. Sometimes we don't get there, but I mean, fake news and deep fakes, I guess is the term, is something that we're grappling with at the moment. And obviously we're looking at some assistance across industry and private partners to look at those issues. The interesting thing about trust and the certificates, we're seeing a lot of business email servers being compromised, so they're actually circumventing the communication networks and exploiting those. So it's a very, very, very challenging environment.
I see this sign reminding me that time's up, time's up, time's up. No? Oh. So that's not the truth. That's fake news. Okay, Ambassador, please. So that time's up is fake news, okay, please.
Thank you. Briefly responding to the last question. Actually, under the GDPR, the consent is required to be asked in a simple and understandable way. Now, you'll tell me whether some of the things that are put to you are understandable, but that at least is part of the law. Secondly, on the issue of trust, to paraphrase somebody, I think we'd say trust is good, enforcement is better. I think in the last year or so, we actually fined a number of companies for not abiding by the law. In Austria, there was a sporting cafe that was fined 5,000 euros for using surveillance cameras. Google in France was fined actually 50 million euro for using consent in an inappropriate way. So I think we would need both. We need the legal framework and enforcing it, and with that, you create trust, and vice versa. Thank you.
Yes, this man, please. There's a question there, where do we draw the line when it comes to privacy? That's practically impossible to draw the line. Yes, this man.
This is not about privacy. Ambassador, the European Union's legislation has been in implementation for more than 1 year now. What are the challenges that you have seen so far, and how the EU has been addressing those challenges? Related to this, can this European way of dealing with it be kind of multilateralized? Because information flow is instant, unlike flows of goods or flows of people. So regional or even local legislation, I think, is not going to be enough. We need at least multilateral framework to deal with this. Maybe, as Mari Pangestu has already alluded to, something similar to the WTO, but here dealing with information. I don't know whether ITU is thinking about something along this line. To Ms. Sani, Narongchai is right. We live in what is called surveillance capitalism. And it is a very asymmetric capitalism, much more asymmetric than what we have until now when it comes to goods capitalism. And maybe the strongest actors here are the four, the very famous four, Google, etc. You said that responsible company is key. Unless we have that, legislation like the one initiated by the EU might not be very effective. But you operate around the globe. How have governments around the globe responded to these ideas of responsible company in the area of this surveillance capitalism? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Disman. You know, he asked question and also gave a lecture. Always, and that's always very good. It's always very good. You know. Now, yes, Ambassador, I think you would like to respond. Your experience with the privacy law,
Sure.
data privacy law, please.
Sure, very briefly. I think I mentioned some of the opportunities that the GDPR has brought about for companies, for changing their model, for putting their data house in order, as I put it. Opportunities for citizens to become more aware and to create that overall culture. There have been also a few challenges in that first year of implementation. One was the fine-tuning of the governance structure, so to speak. So we have, at the level of the member states, each member state has a data protection authority. Now, some fine-tuning was needed between what those authorities were doing and what the European Board for Data Protection was doing, and the harmonization that was needed in a number of areas. Second challenge was the one of communication. We saw a number of SMEs putting questions about what exactly the law is about and what it is not about. And very often there were SMEs, not very big SMEs, that are not as necessarily affected by the GDPR, but because there was so much to do, and sometimes, to be frank, also a number of consultants who were proposing jobs for things that weren't necessarily needed. So it was important for us, and it keeps on being important for us to be able to communicate about what exactly GDPR is and what it isn't. That's also why before we started implementation, we had a 2-year period between the actual adoption and the start of the implementation, really to get everybody to know what we're talking about, what we're not talking about, and what companies need to change and what they don't necessarily need to change. On the second issue of the multilateral framework, I think you're absolutely right. Ideally, we would have a multilateral framework. That's always the favorite way of the European Union. And it could be developed, for example, building on the modernized Convention 108 of the Council of Europe, or indeed the initiative of data free flows with trust that Japan has launched. But ideally, we would have a multilateral framework that everybody buys into, that will make things much easier for all of us.
Any member of the panel that to say anything? The time's up is real. There's not that one is the fact. So maybe I should bring this to a close. I think we have had a very interesting discussion. I can tell you that as an economist, I am very concerned about this subject matter because what we have now is a new kind of capitalism, and data is an asset under management is the key. In the old market capitalism, it is self-correcting, self-adjusting. You reach equilibrium, you know, from demand and supply. But in this case, it is self-reinforcing. It's getting bigger and bigger all the time, which means that it can do good things, it can be abused, it can be bad. And we people keep reinforcing it. And we are asking companies and governments to please help, but at the same time, we create more and more data every day. So I think the whole world needs to really take up this subject as a top priority for ethics, for the kind of lifestyle that should be to the benefit of all of us. With that, I'd like to end the session. Thank you very much, all the members of the panel, for your contribution, and the audience participants for very active participation. Thank you very much.
Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, I want to inform you that policy address which will be delivered by Her Excellency Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Minister of Finance, Republic of Indonesia, will be given tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. in this conference room. Unfortunately, Her Excellency Sri Mulyani Indrawati is still in the Parliament for the National Budget Plan discussion. Secondly, I would like to remind you about the tomorrow's event. Along with the youth dialogue, there will be 3 breakout sessions. Please make sure that you already registered and confirm your attendance. If not, please meet our staff outside of the conference room. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the end of our first day of our event. Dinner will be served in Banda A room. For VIP guests, please proceed to Banda B room. Thank you very much for all the speakers. Please do stay for dinner, because we already served it for you. Thank you very much for all speakers, moderators, and participants who have joined us for today's session. We will see you again tomorrow for the second day of 2019 CSIS Global Dialogue. Thank you.